Bedtime story, eh? I don't know. Do you want to hear a bedtime story? I guess I can do a bedtime story. I've got to upload Bites of Madness, don't I? Do that right now.
I am finding it difficult to go to sleep.
Hmm. Let me upload Bites of Madness, then we get into a bedtime story.
Yay, Uncle Jason is telling us a bedtime story.
So it's a bedtime story you want, eh? Hmm. Let's see what little old me can come up with here. A long time ago, in the land of kings and queens, there lived a young maiden. Her name used to be Steve, but now she calls herself Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow lived in a castle owned by one of the barons of the king. She didn't want to live in the castle, though, because she was stuck up in her tower. The baron kept her there against her wishes. But Gwyneth knew that one day she would get out of the tower and explore the world. Unfortunately for her, one of the great medieval wars started, and she was stuck up in her tower for years and years. But she learned some interesting skills, such as hiding and cowering like a bitch. But she also learned how to wield a sword. Well, one day, after the wars were over and the castle was being rebuilt, Gwyneth decided to get up and leave. She left to explore the world. Unfortunately for her, one of the skills she learned was not survival. She didn't know what to eat, where to eat, or how to get water, and she was in a swamp. However, she did learn one life saving tactic: how to light fires. Gwyneth was cold and hungry and dehydrated, but she knew how to take care of the cold part. She lit a fire. Unfortunately for Gwyneth, she was never taught the ability to maintain a safe fire so as to not burn down the entire king's forest. Gwyneth lit the great forest fire of Aught 8. It burned down the king's forest and blanketed the kingdom in black smoke for years and years. Gwyneth ran away after that. She was embarrassed by the fact that she had blanketed an entire countryside in black smoke by burning down the king's forest. She was also quite concerned that the king would find her and execute her for such heinous treachery. Gwyneth ran away to a port city, where she boarded a ship to cross the sea. On that ship, the captain had a heart attack and died while they were out at sea. The first mate took over, but he had a sudden heart attack and died. And then the second mate took over, and he, too, had a heart attack and died. Gwyneth was left alone on the ship at sea, and so she decided to navigate the ship by herself. She navigated the ship and landed on what we would call Greenland, which is really a land made of ice. Gwyneth was shit out of luck. She was on an ice sheet in a boat with no surviving members by herself. So she got out of the boat and she decided to find a new city. She found a city, a small city of fisher trade, traded some clothes that she had taken off the corpses of the pirates, and got herself some food and some water and a place to stay. Gwyneth was warm. Unfortunately, it wasn't all to be fantastic, fun times for Gwyneth, as the town was invaded by skeletons. The army of skeletons attacked everyone and killed almost everyone, but Gwyneth was trained with a sword, unlike the fishermen who were only trained with fishing poles. Gwyneth was able to defend herself from the skeleton horde when the skeleton king appeared and demanded that Gwyneth lay down her weapon and accept her fate. Gwyneth did no such thing, and since the skeleton lord wasn't actually a real thing, she said, "I don't believe in you," and the skeleton lord disappeared. Unfortunately, everyone else was still dead, and Gwyneth was the only one with a sword there. She went and traveled some more by foot until she found a proper ship. She took this ship across the sea and landed in what we would call Russia. Gwyneth was unfortunately by herself on the ship, as everyone had abandoned ship because they've started to hear about Gwyneth the Terrible, the sword-wielding maiden lady who walks around and murders people. She docked the ship by herself in what we would call Russia, and people have heard about this lady. She stepped off the ship and immediately the town grew silent, and people started to walk away. They were afraid of Gwyneth the Conqueror. But nothing happened to the people. No swords were raised, no murder happened, and they became comfortable with Gwyneth as she committed no crimes and did no murder. But then something else happened. A gigantic tsunami took out the town that Gwyneth was in. Fortunately for Gwyneth, she wasn't in the town at the time, as she had headed south to try and head back towards her homeland. But the tsunami knocked out most of the people in that town and destroyed that town and leveled it. Soon word spread about Gwyneth the Destroyer, the Conqueror, and soon, as Gwyneth entered city to city, town to town, she conquered more and more towns, and simply arriving, Gwyneth would own another town and would own another city. She said nothing. She did nothing. She would only ride her horse down to each town, and each town would acquiesce to her demands. Unfortunately for those towns would also be burnt to the ground along the way because there was a horrible, horrible, horrible forest fire that Gwyneth started that had seemed to engulf the entire countryside. Gwyneth eventually made her way back home when she'd found that the castle she used to live in was no more. It had been destroyed. It had been destroyed by the invaders that had come previously. So Gwyneth sat there, depressed. The town was destroyed, the castle was destroyed, and everything she touched was destroyed. She wondered what she could do. So she moved to the countryside and became a potato farmer. And that's how the Irish starved to death.
Kind of a grim story.
Well.
Must be German.
Yeah, well, of course.